Hello everybody, my name is Karryshh and welcome back to another recap video. Today it's finally the time. It's the recap I was patiently waiting to make. Latest Japanese horror, Anoko Watare. It means who is that? The second name of this movie is Sana. Let me hear. And yes, it's the sequel to the movie Sana that I have recapped already. But you can understand this movie without watching the last one, although it will help the story if you know who Sana is already. Basically, she is an evil spirit of a girl who hums a really creepy song. The movie was outstanding, you must watch it. Put this one in the bucket list right now. On top of that, if you're new to my channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button and like this video. It will help me get motivated. And with that said, sit back and relax as I recap Anoko Watare. The movie starts with Sana whispering in a demonic voice, June 23rd, 1992, Itoi Shigemi. Then we see Sana on the school rooftop getting bullied by 3 girls. One of them was named Itoi Shigemi. Actually, you see, Sana had reported them to the teacher and now they were making her pay for it. Down below, a teacher named Masako notices the girls on the rooftop and rushes up to help. But then, strong wind starts blowing and Itoi slips and falls to the other side of railing, but she managed to grab it. Sana immediately grabs her hand and the other 2 girls rush to help as well. But then, Sana, in an eerie tone, says that she wants to hear her final voice, and just like that, she lets go. Itoi falls to her death, and if you remember, this exact scene was shown in the first part of the movie, but this time we finally know how Itoi actually died. Cut to July 2nd, 2024. The movie now takes us back to the same school where Sana used to study. We see a teacher named Kimijima waiting for another elementary teacher named Yuma. The two had planned their date, but as soon as Yuma arrives, he gets hit by a van. His body was thrown across the street and it crashes right into a vending machine. There, a girl named Hitomi was standing nearby and she was frozen in shock. But then, right in front of her eyes, an unseen force suddenly drags Yuma under the vending machine. Kimijima comes running and screams for Yuma and she breaks down in tears. People rush to help, pulling Yuma out from under the vending machine. But the good news was he was still breathing. However, just then, a cold, evil hand grabs Kimijima's wrist. It was actually Sana's spirit, and Kimijima was paralyzed with fear as Sana fades into the air, humming a creepy tune. But for now, Kimijima shakes it off and focuses on Yuma. Yuma then falls into a coma and Kimijima takes care of him. His students visit him in the hospital accompanied by another teacher, Yumiko. The whole school gets gloomy after what happened to Yuma and we find out that Yuma actually lived at the school. Turns out he's an orphan and Yumiko, the teacher, was actually like his stepmother. She actually raised him. Later, Kimijima spends some time in Yuma's dorm and finds one of his old childhood sketchbooks. Inside, there was a weird drawing of a house, and that house was Sana's house, meaning Sana's spirit might have been connected to Yuma since he was a child. The next day, Kimijima meets with Nakamura, the head teacher. He gives her some summer school duties, assigning her to tutor a few students, and one of those students were Hitomi. Hitomi then leads Kimijima to the classroom, but as they walk, Sana appears behind them, silently watching, and the moment Hitomi turns around, she was gone. Now when they finally reach the class, we realize that this is the same classroom where Sana used to study back in 1992. Later, as Hitomi is heading home, she spots a girl sitting at the piano in the hallway, someone she's never seen before. Of course, it was Sana, and she was playing that same eerie tune. Hitomi walks up to her and without saying a word, they start playing the tune together. For the first time, Hitomi feels like she might have found a friend because she never had one before. Just then the school janitor arrives and tells Hitomi it's time to go home, and in that moment, Sana suddenly vanishes. But she leaves behind her personal diary, and that night, Kimijima stays with Yuma at the hospital. The next day, we meet the rest of the students assigned to summer school: Takeru, Daiki, Rento, and Mari. Here, except for Takeru and Hitomi, the other three were just messing around and they were not taking study seriously. Kimijima then arrives and hands out an assignment, but as she distributes the paper, she notices something strange. An extra student in the room, sitting right behind Hitomi, was Sana. Now, up until this moment, no one had noticed her there, so Kimijima was obviously confused. But for now, she just hands Sana an assignment like the rest. A little while later, Kimijima suddenly sees Itoi Shigemi's dead body lying in the exact spot where she fell at the beginning of the movie. But then in the blink of an eye, Itoi stands up and her face was now twisted and demonic. Kimijima stumbles back and rushes towards the balcony, but when she looks again, Itoi was gone. Now during class, Hitomi returns Sana's diary to her. Sana then begins to write something, but she also was quietly humming her eerie tune again. It annoyed Mari and she snaps at her and told her to shut up, which perhaps doesn't sit well with Sana, cause then after class, Kimijima heads to the spot where Itoi had died. There she finds an old shrine and asks Hitomi about it, but according to Hitomi, the shrine has been there for ages and no one really knows who it belongs to. But just then, out of nowhere, Sana's belongings starts falling from the rooftop, making Kimijima and Hitomi freeze in shock. They look up and they see Sana standing at the edge of the roof about to fall. Obviously, Kimijima rushes for help, but before she can do anything, Sana plunges down. Everyone watches in horror as she crashes to the ground, but then Sana's haunting melody echoes through the entire school, because here was the thing, Sana was never the one who fell. She was actually standing on the balcony with the rest of the students, singing. And the girl who just died, it was Mari. When Kimijima and Hitomi realizes who actually fell, they scream in terror. And soon the police arrive and an investigation begins. They start cautioning everyone, and meanwhile a familiar figure steps on the scene, Masako. And she was actually now school's principal. Now here, Masako obviously realizes that the history is repeating itself and she confides in Kimijima about what happened back then. At the same time in the hallway, Takeru is telling the other students a similar story, how 30 years ago, a girl named Itoi Shigemi had fallen to her death from the rooftop. But this is where a shocking truth is revealed. Back in 1992, there were 3 girls on that rooftop, Itoi and the 2 other bullies. Their names were Yoshinaga and Michiko. But here's a twist. Yoshinaga is actually Hitomi's mother and Michiko is actually Takeru's mother. That's why both Hitomi and Takeru knew about this old incident because their mothers had told them about it. Now Takeru shares this revelation with Rento and Daiki, while at the same time outside, Hitomi is explaining everything to Kimijima and Masako. However, Hitomi and Takeru didn't know that the girl responsible for the death of Itoi was actually Sana. Now after this, Kimijima and Hitomi return to the school where they find Sana playing her eerie tune on the piano. Hitomi was happy to see her friend alive, but Kimijima quickly realizes something was wrong. Actually, you see, Daiki, Takeru and Rento were all humming along to the melody, completely entranced. Kimijima snaps them out of it, but then she notices something even more disturbing. Hitomi was now humming the song too, along with Sana. That's when it hits her that maybe something is wrong with this song. Just then, the students' parents arrive at the school and they rush to check on their children. Among them is Michiko, who after so many years finally reunites with Yoshinaga. Together, the 2 women take their children, Hitomi and Takeru, home. As they walk, they talk about how today's tragedy was eerily similar to what happened in 1992. Michiko believes that ever since that year, the school has been cursed, and she's certain that it has something to do with that girl. Eventually, the 2 part ways and head to their respective homes. We follow Yoshinaga and Hitomi, but as they were walking, suddenly Hitomi starts hum that cursed melody and Yoshinaga freezes in horror. Without thinking, she shoves her daughter away from her, and that's when Hitomi stares at her mother and asks, "Ano ko wa dare?" She asked who was that girl, the girl who was responsible for the death of Itoi. Yoshinaga was visibly shaken as she starts yelling. She refused to talk about her past and warns Hitomi to ignore anything strange she might see at school. Meanwhile, later that night, Kimijima takes Sana home since her parents hadn't come to pick her up. From the outside, Sana's house looks completely normal. Inside, Kimijima meets with Sana's father, Takeshi, and her pregnant mother, Shiori. Kimijima also finds out that the unborn child will be named Toshio because they have already decided on a name. As Kimijima glances around, she also notices Sana's grandmother, Takaya, resting in one of the rooms. After this, Shiori stands up and calls out,
Sana!
"Go take care of your grandmother." Sana comes rushing with a tape recorder and she then heads over to Takaya's room. Once inside, she turns on her recorder and says, 11th August, 1992, my grandmother, Takaya. Now, if you remember at the beginning of the movie, before Shigemi died, Sana had said something eerily similar. This means one thing, Sana had plans to kill her grandmother all along. Now, when Sana says the date, Kimijima was confused. It was actually 2024. Before she can process it, Sana suddenly dashes to her room, and that's when Kimijima notices something evil. Sana has placed a wet cloth over Takaya's face, which was suffocating her. Shiori then rushes over to help her mother, but what was strange is that she doesn't seem too panicked, almost like this is a normal occurrence in their house. Meanwhile, Takeshi hands Kimijima a plate of cake, and soon Shiori rejoins them. But then, out of nowhere, Takeshi turns to his wife and asks, "Did your mother die?" Shiori calmly replies, "Oh, she's still alive. She'll probably live for a long time. But honestly, if she did die, I wouldn't even know. I'm too busy with work." Takeshi sighs. He says, "She's really causing us a lot of trouble, isn't she?" Shiori nods and replies, "I just want her to stay alive until her grandson is born. But maybe." Now here, Kimijima was listening to this unsettling conversation and then she decides that it's time to leave. But just as she gets up, Takeshi suddenly repeats, "Did your mother die?" Shiori calmly replies, "Oh, she's still alive. She'll probably live for a long time. But honestly, if she did die, I wouldn't even know. I'm too busy with work." Takeshi sighs. He says, "She's really causing us a lot of trouble, isn't she?" Shiori nods and replies, "I just want her to stay alive until her grandson is born. But maybe." Now here, Kimijima's breath catches in her throat because after that, the couple again start repeating the same conversation word for word. Kimijima's heart starts pounding and suddenly she feels nauseous and notices that the date on the cake box is actually 13th August 1992. The cake was long expired. But here, let's take a moment to process this. If you noticed, Sana had said August 11th in her recording, but the date on the cake box was August 13th. This means the entire scene Kimijima just witnessed wasn't happening in real time. It was actually a memory from the past. Actually, you see, Sana's house is cursed, and now we understand that it can manipulate past memories to attack those who are actually cursed. Even though Sana made that recording on 11th August, the cake box actually arrived in the house on 13th August, but in this moment in present, both timelines were overlapping and Kimijima was seeing all of them at once. Now Kimijima sprints to the bathroom and she was gonna throw up, but just then she freezes cause there she sees Takaya's evil spirit. This actually confirms it. In the past, Sana did end up killing her grandmother. She then starts moving towards Kimijima and Kimijima stumbles backward until she falls and notices something else. There was a wire shaking right beside her. Then it snakes its way towards Sana's room as if it was being pulled by something unseen, and that's when Kimijima starts running. When she looks up into Sana's room, she sees Sana's body moving backward, almost as if like someone is pulling her body towards the ceiling. Then out of nowhere, Toshio, Sana's younger brother, who wasn't even born in 1992, appears near the hallway and walks straight into Sana's room. That's when it clicks. Kimijima suddenly remembers a drawing from Yuma's childhood book. It was a sketch of the staircase in Sana's house. This means Yuma was cursed all along, and from that's where the curse is actually spreading. Then Sana's eerie song starts playing again, and the door to her room creaks open. She slowly steps out in an unsettling way, and at that same time, Takaya's spirit starts moving here and there. Takaya can't see clearly yet, but then she eats the cloth that was covering her mouth, and then the second she spots Kimijima, she roars at Kimijima and Kimijima screams. She tries bolting out of there, but the door was locked, and then Shiori appears, kneeling beside Kimijima, and she smiles and says, "Teacher, come inside and have some tea." This freaks Kimijima so much that she starts screaming her lungs out until the gate opens and she runs for her life. Finally, Kimijima understands Sana was never human to begin with. She's something far worse. Just then, Masako appears. She was actually following Kimijima this whole time. Masako then comforts Kimijima, but when the two turn toward the house has changed. It now looks completely barren and evil. There were newspapers posted outside. They states that Takeshi and Shiori had had their daughter. They had analyzed Sana themselves, but before she died, Sana's voice was recording on her tape recorder. In that final recording, Sana had said, "I want to hear my own voice." Here, Masako reveals to Kimijima that there's another story behind Sana's death, and the scene shifts to the hospital where Yuma has a strange experience. He feels like he's waking up, but when he steps out of the hospital room, he sees Shiori standing by the stairs. She was pregnant, but actually what's happening here is Yuma's soul had briefly left his body, and that detail is important to remember. In other words, Yuma was astral traveling, out-of-body experience if you know what I mean. The scene cuts to Hitomi, who meets up with Takeru at a gaming center, where we see that Takeru had stolen a 1992 school yearbook from his mother. They're trying to figure out who the mysterious girl was, the one who pushed Shigemi. They flip through the pages, recognize some similar faces like a young Masako, Yoshinaga, and Michiko, but then they see Sana. And here they realize that Sana is a spirit who's attending their class. But why? They don't understand that. With that yearbook in hand, they rush to Kimijima and Masako, and now Masako reveals something shocking. Actually, you see, after Shigemi's death, Masako was so traumatized that she didn't go to school for a long time. But Sana, she was back the very next day, acting as if nothing had happened. When Masako finally returned to school, she witnessed that all the students were blaming Sana for Shigemi's death, and they were tormenting her every single day. Masako felt bad for her because at that time she had no idea what Sana really was. And then one day, the bullying turned brutal. The students shoved nails into Sana's shoe and they cut her feet really badly. However, Sana didn't react. Instead, when she go to the medical room and Masako treated her, Sana told Masako that she doesn't want to report any of this. She wants to hear everyone's voices. Here in this story, the conclusion becomes clear. Sana's spirit has been collecting people's voices by unaliving them. But why? The answer lies in a dream book Sana wrote back in 2nd grade. Her dream was to share her song with the entire world. She wanted to bring her music to life, and to do that, her plan was simple. Unalive people steal their voices and use them in her song. That's why Sana's singing sounds so beautiful, yet so demonic and haunting at the same time. And if you remember that this was actually the revelation in first part too. However, now Kimijima was confused. If that was Sana's goal, then why did her own parents unalive her? And why did they use a vacuum cleaner coat to hang her? In response, Masako reveals something chilling. Actually, you see, on the day Sana died, she had actually called Masako, and when Masako arrived at her house, she found Sana's lifeless body and her parents sitting on the floor completely in shock. According to Masako, they weren't the ones who unalived their daughter, but if that's true, then who did? There was only one person who might have the answer, and the scene now shifts to Gonda, the detective from the first part. Gonda is drinking at a bar and he was completely wasted when Masako and others show up. The moment he sees Masako, he panics and runs away because he has no interest in dealing with Sana's spirit anymore. The group chases after him and we learn that Gonda is now a former detective. But then Masako yells out that another girl has just died at our school. Hearing this, Gonda starts running even faster, but eventually they corner him and he has no choice but to listen to what they have to say. The next day, Gonda takes all of them to a junkyard where he's been hiding something. It was Sana's cursed tape recorder from the first part, and ever since the events of the first movie, he had kept it locked away so that Sana couldn't use it to kill anyone else. Gonda pulls out the tape recorder, places it in front of Masako and the others, and then immediately runs off. Masako picks up the tape, which has something written on it, Mina no Utta, which means everyone's song, and that of course was also the title of the first movie. Now to listen to the tape, everyone gets in the car and starts listening. Sana's voice comes through, first saying June 23rd, 1992. Itoi Shigemi. Then the tape plays the exact sounds of the scene we saw in the beginning of the movie. That's when everyone realizes Sana had been recording people's voices right before their deaths to use in her song. And Shigemi was her first victim. The more people she unalived, the more evil her song became. But it wasn't just that. The tape recorder itself was trapping their souls, giving life to Sana's music. Then Sana continues and says, September 2nd, 1992, my little brother, Toshio. After this, the sound of a heartbeat plays, and this was from the past when Sana had crawled under her mother's blanket and she was recording the voice of her unborn brother Toshio. When Shiori saw that, she was completely horrified. And here's the thing, Sana didn't unalive her brother that day because back then she was still human and there were limits to what she could do. That was actually becoming a problem for her because she wanted to complete her song, but being human was holding her back. Then the tape plays one more entry, September 23rd, 1992, I, Sana. And that's when we understand Sana had orchestrated her own death. She wanted to become a spirit so she could finish her song and make sure the entire world heard it. This will make even more sense in a little while. Now the tape recorder then plays the sound of Sana's death. At the same time, we see a flashback of what really happened. Sana had wrapped the vacuum cleaner cord around her own neck and called her parents for help, pretending that the cord was stuck outside the door. Then Shiori and Takeshi starts pulling on that cord as hard as they could, which eventually strangled their daughter to death. But even in her final moments, she swore that she would make the world listen to her song. Then the moment she died, the door hinges break open and her lifeless body fell down the stairs with the door. These sounds from the tape were so disturbing that Takeru freaks out and runs off. He immediately finds Gonda and brings him back. This is where Gonda finally explains what Sana's spirit really is. Now you see, in Japan, there's a concept of living spirits. Normally, when a person dies, their souls leave their body. A living spirit is different. These are spirits that become ghosts on purpose to fulfill their desires. We already know that Sana wanted the whole world to hear her song. That's why she deliberately got herself unalived. Now she's a cursed spirit that exists everywhere with her song. She can even manipulate past memories. That's why when Kimijima went to Sana's house, she experienced the house as it was in the past. Then, out of nowhere, the recorder turns on again. Sana's voice plays July 2nd, 2024, Yuma. Immediately after this, the sound of Yuma's accident echoes from the tape and horrified, Kimijima quickly shuts it off. But now it was clear, Sana's curse is what caused Yuma's accident. Everyone was stunned because this recording was recent, which means Sana's spirit is back. But why? In the first movie, her spirit was freed because they found a lost tape of her song in the recording studio. But nothing like that has happened this time. So why and how has she returned? According to Gonda, anyone who has heard Sana's song is now cursed and will disappear. Gonda believes Yuma was the first victim of this new curse, so now they need to figure out how it got to him in the first place. But Gonda refuses to help any further. Here, Kimijima decides to keep Sana's recorder with her and the group heads to the school for a meeting. Masako tells Takeru to call Daiki and Rento immediately and get him to school, while she goes to find head teacher Nakamura. Meanwhile, Kimijima arrives at the hospital and asks Yumiko if anything strange or evil has happened to Yuma recently, but Yumiko has no idea. Inside the school, now we see Nakamura who is wandering in the halls, but in the reflection of the floor beneath him, Sana is walking right alongside him. Then suddenly, evil Shiori appears behind him. She starts murmuring, "Have you seen my son? Where is my son? Where is he? Where is he? Where is he?" Mitsuketa, which means I found him. And just like that, Nakamura vanishes. At the same time, Masako was searching for Nakamura when she noticed someone entering a classroom. She rushed inside to check, but there was no one inside. Back at the hospital, the tape recorder suddenly turned on by itself. Terrified, Kimijima grabs it and runs out. She goes to the stairwell and the recorder plays Sana's voice. July 25th, 2024. Takeru. Hearing that, Kimijima freezes and she now knows that Takeru is Sana's next target. The scene shifts to Hitomi and Takeru, who were on their way to pick up Daiki and Rento. On their way, Hitomi gets a call from Kimijima and she urgently tells her to grab Takeru's hand right now and never let him go. At the same time, Daiki calls Takeru, but something about the way he was talking was off. In that moment, Hitomi holds Takeru's hand, which confused him even more. Soon, moments later, Takeru gets hypnotized by Sana's song and then,
あなたの夫もちょうだい。
instead of Hitomi, he sees Sana. Horrified, he yanks his hand away from Hitomi and in an instant, he disappears from right in front of her. Meanwhile, Masako turns around and comes face to face with herself, her 1992 self, staring right at her. Young Masako steps closer and Masako was so terrified that she couldn't even move. Then her younger self's eyes turn blood red and just as she's about to reach her, she vanishes. Then, Nakamura suddenly stumbles out of the classroom door, but the moment he steps past the doorway, he disappears too. Masako looks down and sees a pair of feet, Shigemi's feet, and as Shigemi walks, Yoshinaga's and Michiko's feet appear as well. But wait, Yoshinaga and Michiko are still alive, so how could their feet be there? So actually you see, Sana's curse doesn't just manipulate memories, it can also recreate living people, people whom Sana have contacted with. Now Shigemi crawls into the classroom, but as soon as she does, her glasses shatter and blood starts dripping from her head. Terrified, Masako hides behind the curtains, but then outside the window, Sana appears. She grabs Masako and pulls her away with her. July 25th, 2024. Teacher Masako has disappeared. The scene cuts to Rento, who's at a gaming center trying to win a giant teddy bear. He keeps failing, so in frustration, he reaches into the machine to pull it out himself. But instead of grabbing the teddy bear's foot, he grabs Sana's foot. Rento freezes in terror, then inside the machine, an evil doll that looks just like Sana appears. Its mouth starts foaming, and at that same time, foam starts coming out of Rento's mouth too. Suddenly, the doll comes to life. Its limbs start twitching. It thrashes wildly against the glass. Its face cracks open, and then it slams its head into the glass before falling to where the prizes are collected. Rento then hesitantly reaches into the slot to check, but then Sana grabs him and he vanishes just like the others. A few moments later, Daiki walks up to the machine, but Rento is nowhere to be seen. Instead, he finds bloody footprints leading out of the machine. The footprints trail away, and Daiki starts following them. Meanwhile, in the background, we see Sana's entire family sitting inside the gaming center. Hitomi arrives searching for her friends, and as she walks through, Sana's father passes right by her. However, she doesn't notice him. On the other hand, Daiki, still following the footprints, reaches a photo booth and steps inside. And inside was actually Sana. After him, Sana's entire family steps into the same booth one by one, and then Sana whispers, July 25th, 2024, Daiki. A single photo prints out from the booth, and in it, Daiki is standing with Sana's family, but their faces were completely evil and Daiki is now gone. That evening, Hitomi and Kimijima were the only ones left, and the two of them meet together, terrified and exhausted. Then Yoshinaga showed up, and she was actually looking for her daughter all morning. This is where we learn something important. Yoshinaga is a terrible person. She constantly bullied Hitomi, even hitting her, and at that moment, Hitomi couldn't help but think that she wishes that a curse would take her next. Right in front of everyone, Hitomi's mother started hitting her again, and unable to take it anymore, Hitomi ran away. After she left, Yoshinaga told Kimijima that Hitomi had been humming Sana's song for quite some time now, and she begged Kimijima to help her. Kimijima was then overwhelmed. She kept on playing Sana's recording over and over again, trying to find a clue. And then, in one of the recording, the words changed. Sana's voice whispered, July 2nd, 2024, my little brother Toshio. Kimijima now froze because July 2nd was the day Sana caused Yuma's accident. That could only mean one thing. Sana's little brother is still alive. And not just that, he is actually Yuma. This changed everything. Yuma wasn't cursed. He was the living source of the curse itself. Anyone he formed a bond with, Sana's curse would go after him. Kimijima then rushed to Yuma's room, or rather Toshio's room. She frantically checked through his belongings and realized he was the one who had drawn those pictures. Then Yumiko, Yuma's stepmother, walked in, and Kimijima looked at her and said that she needs to know the truth about Toshio. Hearing this, Yumiko's face went pale, and the next day, Yumiko took Kimijima to a nursing home. There they met Sana's father Takeshi, who was now old and frail. Then they saw Sana's mother, Shiori, but she was completely insane, clutching a doll, rocking it in her arms, calling it Toshio. So yes, Sana's parents were still alive. The world only thought they were dead. And actually the truth is, after Sana's death, the moment Toshio was born, child services took him away. And that's how Yumiko ended up adopting him. So far, Sana's curse hadn't reached her parents, but now that Kimijima, who was already cursed, had shown up, things started to take a turn. Out of nowhere, Takeshi looked at his wife and asked, Is your mother dead? Shiori casually replied, Oh no, my mother is still alive. She's going to live a long time, but if she dies, I probably won't even know. I'm always so busy with work. And obviously, this conversation shocks Kimijima. Then suddenly, Shiori started kicking her fake son. Nurses rushed in to restrain her, and they drag her away as she screamed that she unalived my son. She unalived my son. My son is dead. And obviously, the she is referring to is actually Sana. Watching all this, Kimijima realized that there was no way that she was getting any useful answers from these people. So she went back to the place where Toshio's accident had happened. Near the vending machine where he was hit, she found a ring. And that's when it all clicked for Kimijima. Toshio had been planning to propose to her, and maybe that's why Sana's curse was unleashed. We already know that Sana's spirit had been attached to Toshio ever since he was unborn. But the moment Toshio decided to bring another girl into his life, that was when Sana got jealous. That was when her curse started again. At this point, Kimijima made a decision. She was done. She wasn't going to fight this curse anymore. She was going to ignore it. Meanwhile, that night, Hitomi, sick of her mother's abuse, showed up outside Sana's house silently begging the curse to take her too. And back at the hospital, something terrifying happened. Once again, Toshio's spirit left his body. He wandered out of his room and saw pregnant Shiori. Shiori then followed him, and terrified, Toshio ran. The next morning, Kimijima went to see Toshio, but she also met Toshio's classmate, and one of Toshio's classmates was drawing a picture of Sana's house. That's when it hit her. If the curse wasn't stopped, more people were going to disappear, and she had no choice but to try and end it. She instantly made her way to Sana's house, where the haunting melody of Sana's song was already playing. Desperately, she yelled at Sana and begged her to stop, reminding her that she was already dead. But before she could process anything, she saw something chilling. Toshio, in his childhood form, walking straight into Sana's room. Kimijima tried to stop him, but from inside, Sana's voice echoed as she tells her that she was going to take her brother with her, cause he belongs with Sana and not with anyone else. Kimijima begged her to stop, but Sana then made an unsettling offer. If Kimijima gave up her own voice, she would let Toshio go. She then started whispering the date, July 27th, 2024. However, just as Sana was about to record Kimijima's name, Kimijima burst into the room and stopped Sana. But then
私の音聞いて。
she saw something that she never expected. Sana wasn't there. Instead, it was Hitomi. Sana had possessed her. Possessed Hitomi then whispered to Kimijima and commands her to listen to Sana's song. When she came to her senses, she was inside Sana's room from 1992, and in front of her, Hitomi was hanging from the door, taking Sana's place, while Sana's presence was looming around her. Then Sana appears next to Kimijima and told her in an emotionless way that she is going to be the next victim after Hitomi. Kimijima had no idea what to do, but she didn't want Hitomi to die, and that is why when Sana started to record Hitomi's name, Kimijima desperately screamed her own name instead. And then in that instant, she runs to Hitomi, grabbed her, and both of them were thrown out of the room. Here Kimijima had done it. She had sacrificed herself to save Hitomi. After this, Hitomi regained consciousness on her school's rooftop. She looked here, there, and then she saw Kimijima hanging from the same spot where Shigemi had fallen back in 1992. Panicked, she rushed forward and grabbed a hold of Kimijima, but before she could do anything else, figures started appearing around him: Shigemi, Sana, Yoshinaga, and Michiko. It didn't take long for Hitomi to realize what was happening. Sana's curse was manipulating past memories, replaying them as if history itself was being rewritten. Then the wind picked up and Shigemi's spirit suddenly plunged downward, disappearing into Kimijima's body, while Sana's evil presence took over Hitomi. Just like before, history was taking place, and this time with Kimijima marked for death. Hitomi fought with everything she had, struggling to expel Sana's presence from her body, but in the end, Sana won. She took over Hitomi, and Hitomi smiled wickedly, whispering into Kimijima's ear that she wants to hear her final voice, and then Hitomi let go. However, just as Kimijima was about to fall, Toshio's spirit appeared out of nowhere. As you remember, his body was still in coma, and his soul is astral traveling. At that moment, he caught Kimijima and saved her life. Sana, however, wasn't finished. She tried once again to end Kimijima, but before she could push her down, something unexpected happened. Shiori. She appeared suddenly and grabbed a hold of her demonic daughter and dragged her straight into the depths of hell. That's right, Shiori saved the day in the end, taking the cursed spirit of Sana with her. With this, the nightmare was finally over. Toshio and Hitomi helped Kimijima to safety. Meanwhile, back at the nursing home, Shiori's physical body had passed away, which explained how her spirit had been able to help. Now with Sana gone, Toshio finally woke up from his coma as well, and it was over. Everything was finally okay. Kimijima arrived to see Toshio and hugged him, and the scene then shifted to a time after summer break. Classes had resumed and life moved forward, but despite that, Hitomi still looked sad. After school, she stood with Kimijima at Mari's shrine. Toshio soon joined them, and then the three of them prayed together. After this, without saying a word, Hitomi walked away, and there were tears streaming down her face. Something was obviously wrong, and then Toshio pulled out his ring. For a moment, Kimijima thought he was going to propose, but instead, he broke down crying and walked away. Puzzled, Kimijima turned toward the shrine, and in that instant, everything changed for her. The shrine wasn't just dedicated to Mari, it had Kimijima's name on it too. Suddenly, she heard Sana's voice whispering, July 27th, 2024. Teacher Kimijima. Here she screamed as the realization sank in. She actually died that day, and she had forgotten that she had died. As a viewer, the sign had been there all along. After Sana was dragged to hell, Kimijima had been wearing the same outfit in every scene. She had reached Toshio impossibly fast. Hitomi had been grieving the entire time, and Toshio, he cried cause he was suffering. The movie ended there, but there was still one last scene. Now before that, I have a surprise for you. We're about to watch a short film, The Last Call, which I made.
What happened to you, Adrian? You are refusing to do anything together. It's been a month since I last saw you. You always say you are busy, but I know you are not. You're really acting strange. I'm worried, Adrian. Did you do something?
Fine. Let's play something.
Yeah, you don't have to be so mean about this.
Not being mean. We just get on the nerves sometimes. I'm sorry. I should have been more understanding. Let's play. Is anyone here?
Whoa! That was quick.
That was really quick. I was wondering if I could ask the first question. Does my best friend Emily have a crush on me?
That's so cute. But we are already in a relationship, aren't we?
No, we're not.
What are you talking about? We've been dating for a year now.
No. Hold up. What's this line? It's a video. I've been talking to a video.
But cheating on me. I chose to stay. I chose you. I hide your secrets because I loved you. And you?
Secret.
You killed me.
Emily. But who made the video?
That's my secret.
Now let me know in the comments what you think about this short film. And now in the final scene, all the people that Sana had made disappear started returning one by one. With Sana gone and her curse broken, Masako reappeared in the classroom, Nakamura in the hallway, Takeru in the tunnel, Rento inside the toy machine, and Daiki inside the photo booth. And then In the very last shot, Toshio looked at Hitomi. For just a split second, he saw something. Sana's reflection in her, which meant a piece of the curse was still inside Hitomi, and maybe, just maybe, Sana wasn't done yet. So this was the recap video on the movie. Sana, let me hear. Anako Wadare. I hope you have liked this video. If you had, then please subscribe to the channel and give this video a thumbs up. I really need your support to go further. If you wanna watch this movie, there's a link to my Telegram channel in the description box. If that link does not work, just go to Telegram and put my channel's name in the search bar. I usually provide with every movie, but for this movie, this is not available at any streaming platform yet, so we're gonna have to wait a little while. Anyway, go join that. I'm mostly active on Insta, so you can follow me there as well, and look into my other channel where we discuss about the mysteries of the world. All the links are in the description box. For now, I'll see you all in the next one. Till then, stay awake, because they always see you.